Welcome to Breaking Point. Krystal, thanks so much for jumping in for Ryan this morning. He is in Dublin.
My pleasure.
Course. Where else would he be?
Yeah, he's doing some interesting things there too. I don't know if we can reveal yet, but there will be more news on that later.
Yes, absolutely. So we have a show that is, I regret to inform everyone, front-loaded with more Epstein news because the Trump administration continues to flail and MAGA continues to be divided over the Epstein question. So we have more comments from the president to get to, more comments from members of Congress, including the Speaker of the House to get to, and people sort of on the outside, MAGA supporters on the outside who are having a tough time with this one. And Krystal, new inflation numbers were out yesterday. Some debate over whether they were good or bad for the administration politically and whether they were good or bad for the American people substantively that we will get to. The most depressing article that I have read in quite a while, Krystal, on why first-time homeownership in the U.S. is at a record low. We're going to break down some of that, along with a viral clip from Tucker Carlson that sort of spoke to exactly this from the Turning Point USA summit. And of course, the Pentagon is now in business with Grok. Did you? Yeah. That's what you expected, right?
Mecca Hitler has taken the Pentagon. That's what's happening here. Apparently.
But actually, this is a real story. The Pentagon has signed a contract with XAI to use Grok for government. So we have all of the details on that story, and we are very excited. We've been trying for days to get in the Superman block. You can see that on the bottom of your screen because producer Griffin and Krystal have just so very many thoughts. Ben Shapiro has thoughts too.
I was going to say, as does Ben Shapiro. His are a little different than ours, but we'll get into all of that. Yeah, well, you know, when I get to see a movie in the theaters, it's a very rare and exciting thing for me. So I have to talk about it, and especially when it's a movie that's, as Hassan Piker put it, 2 hours of F Israel is basically. We're going to try to keep it spoiler free, but there's actually a lot of very interesting political dynamics going on in the movie that are worth digging into. So Griffin will join us for that. So that should be fun.
And we do always think of producer Griffin as like the Ben Shapiro of our operation. So it makes sense that we'll have him.
The parallels are striking on every level.
Yeah, it's incredibly similar. People all around. So as a reminder, breakingpoints.com for premium subscription. If you can't subscribe, no problem. Just subscribe on the channel here. Like the videos. We appreciate it so much. And let's start with the president himself weighing in more on the case of Jeffrey Epstein. Donald Trump kept getting questions, of course, because there's so much confusion radiating forth from his administration, partially why these questions are totally fair and will not go away for the Trump administration. So let's roll A1. This is Trump answering some questions just yesterday.
She's given us just a very quick briefing, and in terms of the credibility of the different things that they've seen. And I would say that, you know, these files were made up by Comey. They were made up by Obama. They were made up by the Biden information. You know, we went through years of that with the Russia hoax, with all of the different things that we had to go through. We've gone through years of it, but she's handled it very well, and it's going to be up to her. Whatever she thinks is credible, she should release. I don't understand it. Why they would be so interested. He's dead for a long time. He was never a big factor in terms of life. I don't understand what the interest or what the fascination is. I really don't. And the credible information's been given. Don't forget, we went through years of the Mueller witch hunt and all of the different things, the Steele dossier, which was all fake. All that information was fake. But I don't understand why the Jeffrey Epstein case would be of interest to anybody. It's pretty boring stuff. It's sordid, but it's boring. And I don't understand why it keeps going. I think, well, really only pretty bad people, including fake news, want to keep something like that going. But credible information, let them give it. Anything that's credible, I would say, let them have it.
All right, so I'm actually going to respond to that clip with a reaction from Ann Coulter, who said, ex ante, I'd say Trump did not rape underage girls, but when he slings bullshit like this, you have to wonder. And quotes Trump saying, Epstein files were written by Obama, Crooked Hillary, Comey, Brennan, the losers and criminals of the Biden administration. Coulter then responds, everything we know about Epstein's teen sex ring comes from the Palm Beach police and the girls themselves. Dems ferociously protected Epstein, a major Dem donor. But Krystal, that is true. Everything we know about Epstein, for the most part, is coming from the local Palm Beach police and the girls themselves. We have gotten trickles of information that are frustratingly limited, actually, from the federal government. So I also saw, I don't know if you saw this as well, Megyn Kelly reporting that she's been told by several people, whether or not it's true, several people have said that the files on Epstein were left in such a way that pointed right at Donald Trump, which could mean a lot of things. It could mean funny business going on. It could mean that there's there when it comes to Donald Trump. But I think that's where this has just opened up an entirely new chapter in Trump's response to the Epstein chaos of Pam Bondi's DOJ, which is now saying that this is part of actually a different kind of deep state plot to frame Donald Trump.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much to say about those two clips we just played of Trump. First of all, no one is buying the Obama wrote the Epstein files line. It's just utterly preposterous. Number two, now he's calling his own supporters bad people for caring about an elite sex crimes ring against young girls with potential intel tie-in and, implicating any number potentially of powerful figures, says that is boring and can't understand why that is interesting to anyone. Number three, the optics there of that second clip where, he's saying, oh, it's boring and you're a bad person if you still care about this. You got Howard Lutnick standing there who, lo and behold, actually purchased one of Jeffrey Epstein's properties in Manhattan, was his longtime neighbor. So, just optically not the best there. He's sort of like chuckling along with what Trump has to say there. And it really is so perplexing and hard to explain outside of, Occam's razor is that he's reacting in this frenetic, insane, and incredibly, if he just wants this to go away, he's doing the polar opposite of making this go away because he's worried about what information might come out. Like, that is the very obvious conclusion. The number of people, Sagar included, by the way, who've said, I didn't really think there was there in terms of Trump until I saw the way he reacted to this. And now it's like, I don't know. And then you start to go back and think about all of the connections and the videos and the flight logs and there was actually a civil suit that named him. Now that went away. Maybe it's because there was nothing there. And so that just, sort of disappeared. But you got Epstein saying that they were besties for a decade. You got Trump on the record in an infamous quote saying, hey, we were good friends for 15 years. And hey, he likes them young. He loves beautiful women, maybe as much as I do. And many of them are on the younger side. So it's not at all preposterous to say what the hell is going on here. And as we discussed yesterday, to be perfectly blunt about this, yes, the American people have a direct interest in knowing whether Mossad has pedo blackmail material on the president of the United States. So I don't think this is going away. The other thing I've been thinking about is, Trump likes these sort of like humiliation rituals for his for the people in his circle to sort of force them into situations that are like embarrassing, go against things that they previously said. So a couple of examples, you had RFK Jr. eating the McDonald's on the plane, right? You had JD Vance being forced to stand behind him as he announces the Iran strike, obviously something that JD Vance was supposedly going to be against. And there are many other examples of that. This almost feels like a humiliation ritual for his supporters. Like, how far can I go in like directly attacking you and gaslighting you that this isn't something that I ran on and that my vice president wasn't out there campaigning on to get elected? It almost feels like that. It feels like a test of the base of like, how far can I go? Can I really shoot someone on Fifth Avenue and you idiots are still going to stick with me? That's kind of the vibe that I get from all of this. It's actually quite twisted.
I think that's a really interesting take because there's something, also Trump, Pam Bondi have known each other. Trump and Pam Bondi have known each other for a really long time. So I wonder also if, obviously his original plan was to put Matt Gaetz in that role. I don't think any of us are buying the 4D chess intentional nomination of Matt Gaetz to have Pam Bondi come into that role. But I think he also just seems to trust that she's protecting, because the way she's doubled and tripled down, it is kind of humiliating, of course, for someone who came in and was promising all of this transparency. But it's also her demonstrating loyalty over and over again, and being forced to demonstrate that loyalty in more sort of increasingly vociferous terms.
And Bongino and Cash too. The reports are Bongino's back in the office. and whatever mental health day he took has restored him to full Trump sycophancy. And, these are two guys who made a living off of delving into, some of the theories around Epstein. And so for them as well, like if they'll do this, they will do anything.
So let's move on to this vote in Congress yesterday. There was a vote in committee people may have heard about. This was Rules Committee day before, and we had Ro Khanna on, obviously, to talk about. He tried to get it in a quick vote, a procedural vote, basically, to include this. It would have forced disclosure on Epstein files within 30 days and demanded that they start preserving all files related to Epstein. That failed in committee. Then Democrats tried to force vote on a rule that would have opened debate on another Epstein, very similar Epstein piece of legislation. So we can go ahead and take a look at this next video.
On this vote, the yeas are 211, the nays are 210. The previous question is ordered. The question is on adoption of the resolution. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed say no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it.
So I have to say, I actually talked to Stubby right after that happened, and some other members of Congress, and also Marjorie Taylor Greene, Anna Paulina Luna, some of these super MAGA people who have been all over the Epstein case, Marjorie Taylor Greene certainly, and they said they're more than happy, basically, to keep voting on this. Like Thomas Massie has a bill. We'll see where that goes. Mike Johnson, yesterday, we have more from him too. So I don't think they had this like whole crypto package that it's all very disgusting. The crypto week. Have you seen any of their like crypto week stuff? It's like
Yeah, I hate it. It's terrible.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, it's actually doing a little bit less well in the House, apparently.
Yes.
I haven't followed it super closely, but some of the terrible crypto legislation failed to meet some like key procedural hurdle yesterday. So that's good. And Democrats have been more united, not uniformly. I think like Richie Torres and Josh Gottheimer and some of like the worst Democrats out there are in favor of it. But there's been less Democratic support in the House than there was in the Senate. So that's at least somewhat encouraging. But listen, on this thing, you had a party line unanimous vote where Republicans were against even opening debate on the release of the Epstein files. So, I'm sure they're going to spin it and they have their excuses of, oh, this didn't make sense to do with crypto week or blah, blah, blah. But at the end of the day, y'all voted against even debating whether the Epstein files should be released after running around for years, posturing like you wanted transparency and you cared about this. So I think it's very hard to see it any other way.
Happy Crypto Week to all who celebrate. Just have to get that out here. Well, so let's
Thank you for your attention to this matter.
Yeah. Let's get into Mike Johnson, actually, because this was, I think this is significant. We'll see. But some Republicans are calling for Galain Maxwell to testify. Mike Johnson himself, obviously, will have some control over whether or not a bill like Congressman Khanna's is passed or Congressman Thomas Massie's is passed. He'll have the ability.
I think they're working together on it, aren't they? I think it's a Massey-Khanna effort at this point.
Perfect. You love to hear it. And that's the type of thing that Mike Johnson will have control over, getting to the actual voting process onto the floor of the House. And so he was talking to Benny Johnson yesterday, also Tim Burchett. Let's go ahead and roll A4.
I'm for transparency. We're intellectually consistent in this. Look, Reagan used to tell us we should trust the American people. I believe in that principle. I know President Trump does as well, and I trust him. I mean, he put together a team of his choosing, and they're doing a great job. It's a very delicate subject, but we should put everything out there and let the people decide it. I mean, the White House and the White House team are privy to facts that I don't know. I mean, this isn't my lane. I haven't been involved in that. But I agree with the sentiment that we need to put it out there. And Pam Bondi, I don't know, when she originally made the statement, I think she was talking about documents, as I understood it, they were on her desk. I don't know that she was specific about a list or whatever, but she needs to come forward and explain that to everybody. I like Pam. I mean, I think she's done a good job. We need the DOJ focusing on the major priorities. So let's get this thing resolved so that they can deal with violent crime and public safety and election integrity and going after Act Blue and the things that the president is most concerned about, as we are. So I'm anxious to get this behind him.
I'm not an attorney. I just find them guilty and hang them publicly. I mean, that's not over the top either. I'm ready. I'm over it. I'm big on clarity and transparency, and that's good reason people don't trust government, either party.
Krystal, that was a good one. Just hang him. Is that what he said?
Yeah, and then shortly thereafter votes against even debating the release of the files. I mean, it's hard to take them seriously in their language here when the voting record at this point says something very different.
They can put up. I mean, if they want to dispel people's deep skepticism, they can move to start tackling some of these bills and to start pressuring transparency. Mike Johnson said in a statement towards the end of the day, all House Republicans are for truth and transparency, and we know President Trump can be trusted to make the right decisions, to stand for justice, and to protect the innocent. Now, Krystal, what's interesting about that, a couple of things. First of all, the next sentence is literally, I'm thankful for President Trump getting involved tonight to ensure that we can pass the Genius Act tomorrow and agreeing again to help us advance additional crypto legislation in the coming days. Much more to come, exclamation point. So pivoting, I mean, I thought pivoting to crypto was a ridiculous look. Of course, I mean, I think that just comes across as ridiculous to a lot of people, but also them saying we're punting to trusting Donald Trump. It's something that we've covered over the last couple of days, and it is not going to be enough for their critics in any way whatsoever to just say, we don't have to do anything in Congress because Republicans in Congress trust Donald Trump. If that's the party line that they're landing on, that's going to be a tough one.
Yeah, no, that seems like where they are is they'll say on one side of their mouth, I believe in transparency. And on the other side, they'll say, but I trust Trump. And Trump is obviously against transparency at this point in time. But increasingly, I just trust Trump is where they are landing. And certainly where we know from reporting, the White House is telling people that's where you need to be. Stop undercutting Pam Bondi. Stop criticizing Dan and Cash. Stop with your even talking about this. If you're still talking about this, you are a bad person and you're giving cover to Obama and crooked Hillary and Jim Comey somehow, who allegedly now wrote the Epstein files. Like, it's just preposterous. So I think that is where congressional Republicans are hoping. They're hoping this all just sort of goes away and dies down. And now on the other side, you've got partisan motivation from Democrats, who I think it's fair to say showed very little at the congressional level. I think this has not been a left-right issue at the level of the American people. It has become a right-wing coded issue because it was sort of like lumped in with the QAnon bucket, even though that is, wildly unfair. But there was mass public interest across the board, regardless of political ideology, as one would expect with, such a horrific and potentially consequential situation. But it's certainly fair to say Democrats in Congress didn't show too much interest when it was Biden in the White House. But now they smell blood in the water. And they have a partisan interest in doing everything they can to keep this thing going. And so Ro Khanna, was first out of the gates with that amendment. That got voted down, nearly a party line vote. There was actually one Republican who crossed over, I'm forgetting his name, who crossed over and voted alongside with Ro.
Yep.
Otherwise, it was a party line vote. And, we talked to him yesterday. He said, no, we're not letting this go. I'm not letting this go. He's working with Thomas Massie to move forward. Massie's already on the outs, so he's already in YOLO mode, having millions dropped on him in a primary challenge, whatever. So I don't expect there to be a let up for a while, especially since Trump keeps like Streisand affecting himself to death on this one. Every time he makes some new preposterous comment, it gives everyone an excuse to continue talking about it. And as they should, because as I said, like, it can be easy to dismiss this as, he's dead. Why do you even care? Blah, blah, blah. But it has potential current consequences for our foreign policy, not to mention having a system of justice that is not two-tier, where elites can just get away with the most horrific crimes imaginable and have it swept under the rug.
Yeah, that's well said. I mean, I think it's because, first of all, current potential foreign policy implications of this. Secondly, you have, this is completely like roiling the administration. So there's questions about what's happening behind closed doors, whether the attorney general is long for this administration, all of those things, completely important conversations. And the story matters to people as a sort of proxy question of trust. That a lot of people, this was one of the issues that brought them along to place their trust in Donald Trump. It's not everyone, and it wasn't anyone's top priority for the most part, but it was one of those things that said you're an insider versus an outsider, and now Democrats have all kinds of political incentives to start pursuing a question that they will be rewarded by voters with trust if they do a good job holding the Trump administration's feet to the fire. I actually want to roll A7, Krystal, because I mentioned it. It goes along with Mike Johnson when Benny Johnson asked House Speaker Mike Johnson whether or not Galain Maxwell should testify. He basically said everything people heard. He said everything should be out there. I'm all for transparency. Attorney General Pam Bondi should come forward and explain herself and tell us what happened. Mike Lee also talked to Benny Johnson yesterday and said Galain Maxwell should testify. Let's roll A7.
You be in favor of Galain Maxwell testifying?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I've posted on this. And if she were to testify, I think she could answer a lot of questions that could help put all of this in perspective. Yeah, I know a lot of these players, some of them are disagreeing with each other. Dan Bongino and I have been really good friends for the last 14 years, and I'm good friends with Kash Patel and also with Pam Bondi. I like all of them. I think there is a way to draw a straight line between all of them in a way that will satisfy the public's both curiosity and legitimate demand to know what happened.
Okay, so Republicans control the House and the Senate, and of course the presidency as well. So ball is in their court. It's in the court of Republican leadership to make some of this happen.
Yeah, and there's some interesting things going on with Galain Maxwell right at this point, because she had an appeal all the way up to the Supreme Court that had gotten sort of pushed off till now, where the government had to respond to how they were handling this appeal. And basically, I mean, it's like this woman is a horrifying sex criminal and implicated in every way in this web of, like a pyramid scheme of pedophilia and molestation. She should just justifiably spend the rest of her life in prison. But what she's saying is, hey, you guys, the government, made this sweetheart deal with Jeffrey Epstein down in Florida under Alex Acosta, who of course ends up being Trump's labor secretary. Part of that deal was that all of the co-conspirators of Jeffrey Epstein are off the hook forever. And I was one of those co-conspirators. So how can you really prosecute me? How can you throw me in prison when you guys agreed to this deal that said anyone who was affiliated with Epstein and implicated in these crimes was off the hook? So that's the appeal that she's making to the Supreme Court. We got an interesting statement from her family that we can put up on the screen here. They say, our sister Galain did not receive a fair trial. Her legal team continues to fight her case in the courts and will file its reply in short order to the government's opposition in the U.S. Supreme Court. If necessary, in due course, they'll also file a writ of habeas corpus in the U.S. District Court, SDNY. This allows her to challenge her imprisonment on the basis of new evidence, such as government misconduct that would have likely changed the trial's outcome. Following the government's response, David Oscar Marcus, counsel of record for our sister in her petition to the U.S. Supreme Court, had this comment, quote, I'd be surprised if President Trump knew his lawyers were asking the Supreme Court to let the government break a deal. And this is in reference to that sweetheart deal that Alex Acosta made. He's the ultimate deal maker, and I'm sure he'd agree that when the U.S. gives its word, it should keep it. With all the talk about who's being prosecuted and who isn't, it's especially unfair that Galain Maxwell remains in prison based on a promise the U.S. government made and broke. These are sentiments, the family says, with which we profoundly concur. So a sort of direct appeal there to Trump himself, who, of course, we played, some of the footage from yesterday whenever he's gotten asked about Galain Maxwell and what he wants to happen for her trial or for her being in prison. He always says, well, I wish her well. And we also have, reporting that allegedly he was considering a pardon for her because he was concerned about what potential information she may have.
Yeah, this is a really interesting development because if she can successfully make this case, and people have questions, I think rightfully, about the way her trial was conducted, not because it was too harsh on Galain Maxwell and too focused on locking her up, but rather in the other direction. So either way, if she's able to get this taken seriously, that this opens up a lot, and it actually comports with the story in the Daily Mail that we covered earlier this week, Krystal, about how Galain Maxwell is telegraphing through an anonymous source to the Daily Mail that she would be willing to talk. Again, you have to take it with a giant grain of salt, but it seems more and more like this is actually plausible that we would start to hear directly from her.
Yeah, well, I mean, if she does have some damaging information about the president, it's an intelligent chess move, because if she's obviously looking to posture to try to get that pardon from Trump. And so this is sort of the threat of, hey, I could testify to Congress. And, right now, sure, Republicans have control of the House and the Senate, but very, very, I would say likely after the midterms, Democrats are going to at least have control of the House. So, that opens up a whole other world of possibilities. And so I think there's some tactical chess playing going on here from the Ghislaine Maxwell side. And the last thing I'll say about this is it just underscores how absolutely absurdly, outrageously disgusting that sweetheart deal was, that it would even be theoretically possible that this woman could get off the hook because of this deal that was made. And just so people recall, I mean, Epstein got a slap on the wrist. It was the charges were pretty minor charges. He served a sentence out, being able to leave on quote unquote work release for 12 hours a day, where he was able to go and do whatever he wanted. I think he served about 13 months on that cushy work release situation where his cell door was open, he had a TV, he could come and go. And then after 13 months, he just was out. I mean, reporting suggests that even though he was supposed to be just in his house, like under, home confinement, he was traveling the world and right back to doing everything that he wanted to do. And when the law enforcement, I'm not sure if it was the FBI, I don't want to implicate the wrong law enforcement agency here, but when they were told, hey, this guy is leaving, he's not staying on home confinement, they were like, he's a celebrity, what can we do? He's a celebrity, what can we do?
Many such cases.
Indeed.
Many such cases, sadly. So let's take a look at A9. This is Scott Jennings. Krystal, we were talking about how some people who are sort of in situations where, I feel like you can tell people who just don't care about Epstein world, like they think it's a weird conspiracy theory and it's not something that's on their radar that they've spent a great deal of time thinking about, and now they're forced to kind of talk about it a lot over the course of the last week on TV or radio or wherever. And I think maybe you could put Scott Jennings in that category, and here's where Scott Jennings and other Republicans are landing. This is A9.
Taken as an article of faith for many years that
what was
that that the idea that there's information that we're not seeing as the general public, and people said that, bought into it. And so Donald Trump wins the election. He appoints Pam Bondi, he appoints Dan Bongino, he appoints Kash Patel. These are all people that this same audience has, confidence in. We trust their judgment. And I think it's just hard sometimes to believe something for a long time and then be told, what we believed is not the case. There are certainly people that have legitimate questions about what happened. I mean, I've heard now two lawyers, both your guest tonight and Arthur Aidala, who I was on with Friday night, both raise questions about whether they believe he even committed suicide. So you can see there are actually, in the know people who are still raising legitimate questions about this case. So you can see why the general public would also have those questions. At the same time, if you vote for Donald Trump and you have trust in his judgment and the people he's appointed, at some point, you have to trust their judgment. I mean, you put them in charge of this. And I think what Doug said is important to know. The Biden people had this stuff. If there was something incriminating about Trump, it would have come out. And also now the Trump people have this stuff. And if there was something incriminating about, Bill Gates or Bill Clinton, it would certainly have come out. And so I guess at some juncture, if you trust the people that you voted for, you trust the people that you voted for.
And just quickly on that point, Krystal, I've heard it a couple of times that if the Biden administration had something on Donald Trump, don't you think it would have come out? That's a line, actually, that a lot of Republicans have used in recent days. And I think you can logically, it's like, okay, maybe there's something to that. But then it's like, actually, these political elite circles are fairly small, and it's possible that whatever implicated Donald Trump would also implicate Democratic donors, would also implicate power brokers who are in Dem circles. Donald Trump himself was in Dem power broker circles in the 80s and 90s. Like, he was somebody who was giving money to Democrats. So it's actually, there's I see why they're rolling with that line. But if there's a bunch of information in the files that are devastating for the Clintons, at the same time that they're devastating to Donald Trump potentially, that to me actually doesn't make a lot of sense.
Well, not to mention, if it is in fact a Mossad blackmail ring operation, then Joe Biden is not going to be part of exposing that,
right?
Because he is a dyed-in-the-wool Zionist. Right. So I think there are
this is the point. Like, even if it is what they always thought they had in the Steele dossier, even if it's like Trump doing something disgusting and whatever, they're still. We've talked about this. They're still being asked to say, if you're, Biden and you are an establishment Democrat and you are thinking you protect Mossad and protect the state of Israel, or you expose Donald Trump doing something sexually horrifying, they're going to choose in one direction over the other, even though that seems insane given all of the different political maneuvers they took. It's just a question of like their personal cost-benefit analysis, and I actually feel like we know where they come down on that when we're talking about like potential nuclear war and world affairs and foreign policy.
Joe Biden was willing to lose his reelection in order to continue backing Israel's genocide. There is apparently nothing that he's not willing to do for that country. And so I don't think it's hard to, imagine that if that in fact is the truth of what's going on here, that he would not be the one to expose that. And it's also worth remembering too, I mean, Joe Biden was in Washington for a long ass time before he was president of the United States, including in the capacity as vice president of the United States. So it's very plausible that he, has known the truth of what is going on there for a long time, and also wouldn't want it exposed that, nobody has ever, like, he didn't show up in the flight logs or anything, but perhaps he's implicated in terms of knowing for a while that this was the truth of what was going on. Now, this is all, now I'm really getting out there in terms of speculation land, but I'm just trying to make the point that it's not hard to imagine a set of circumstances in which Joe Biden is also not interested in exposing the truth of what's going on here, and where he would himself take on some political damage for doing so, or at the very least undercut his favorite national ally.
Hey, if you like that video, hit the like button or leave a comment below. It really helps get the show to more people.
And if you'd like to get the full show ad-free and in your inbox every morning, you can sign up at breakingpoints.com.
That's right. Get the full show, help support the future of independent media at breakingpoints.com.